Here we go then, Max. Stand by. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hello, good afternoon. What has got... And welcome to my world. What you've just seen is how my hour begins every time I go into the news studio. What you didn't hear was what else is going on in my ear. Because as well as the counting down to the program going on air, what we also have is the editorial team saying, oh, we haven't got that guest, so could you just ad-lib for a few seconds till we get this and get that? Oh, we've lost that video report. Could you fill a bit of time? And this is all going on while they're going 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, cue. And you've got to look fabulous and sound fabulous. The other thing that happens as well is if I get to 0 on that countdown and I haven't taken the breath in the appropriate moment, I come up on the screen to you and I go, good afternoon. So I'm gauging the time of the breath that I take. I'm gauging the time when I look up at that camera. The counting down is going on. And the talking is going on as well. Today I'm going to talk about time, and it's a 24-hour world. I work in 24-hour news. It never, ever stops. News has happened, it's happening, or it might happen tomorrow. So if you're a news editor and you're sending your reporters out and they're saying, there's nothing happening on this story, don't worry, it will. So that's how it works. But what is time? Let's have a look. Well, that's the definition of time, which seems fairly straightforward. Measures which by events can be ordered from the past through the present and into the future. But it's also the measure of the durations of the events themselves and the intervals in between them. So you mustn't forget those moments as well. I think for women, I think we're actually very good at managing time, but more importantly, multitasking during that time. So I think my skills of listening to the director, thinking about what I'm doing, giving other instructions, are things that we women do every day, particularly if you're juggling a very high-powered career, or any career, with a family and children. Now, the men do it as well, of course. I can't disregard my male colleagues, but I think we women do it much better. Today, I'm going to talk about various aspects of time, because I want to really trigger in your head, what do you do with your time? Do you use it properly? Do you think you could use it a little bit better? And are you getting time for yourself? But nobody would put their hand up on that one. A couple of, well, 5 numbers for you. Does anyone know what they are? I'll tell you, because it's not a quiz. Okay, we'll start from the top and then left to right, left to right. These numbers are seconds. Okay, seconds in an hour. Seconds in a day, seconds in a week, seconds in a month, and seconds in a year. That video you saw at the beginning is 25 seconds long. There was quite a lot in it for 25 seconds, wasn't there? It's amazing what you can pack in to seconds. As broadcasters, we speak at 3 words per second. You can try it at home. Write something that's about 180 words long, read it, and if you hit the minute, you've got a job at the BBC. Okay? So time, it affects us all. We can't get away from it. It runs away from us, and sometimes we even wish it away. You hear phrases like, well, I wouldn't do that. That's a waste of time. But is it a waste of time? Because say you want to spend the day under the duvet. That might not be a waste of time for you, but it could be a waste of time for someone else. It's your choice how you use your time, and it's your choice how you use your time productively, particularly in the workplace and in your career, or developing your hobby, or whatever it is you want to do. It's your time. The countdown. It's exciting, isn't it, at the beginning when you hear them counting down? The thing about a countdown is you're anticipating something happen. So you're waiting for that thing to take place. Think about if you're watching TV pictures of a building being demolished. You're not going to turn away from the screen, are you, when that building's about to go down? They're doing that 10, 9, 8, somebody's standing with a plunger for the dynamite. You're going to wait and see the office block collapse. Now, that's quite spectacular, but this is even more spectacular.
T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5. Liftoff of Space Shuttle Atlantis on a mission to build, resupply, and to do research on the International Space Station.
Houston now controlling. Atlantis begins its penultimate journey to shore up the International Space Station. Atlantis now on the proper alignment for its 8.5-minute ride to orbit. 4.5 million pounds of hardware and humans taking aim on the International Outpost.
It's fabulous, isn't it? You wouldn't walk away from it. I particularly like the line of humans and hardware going to the International Outpost. So what that illustrates in a way is we wait for things. So waiting for something to happen, waiting for that gap. If you think on a similar vein of the counting down, if your kids are at a sports day, ready, steady, go. You're waiting for the go. You're getting ready. Similarly, elite athletes are waiting for that starting gun. And that's a really interesting concept because the milliseconds before that gun goes off can make the difference between them winning or losing that race, which is why you see false starts, because they're really just ready to go to grab every second they can. They're waiting for that gun to go off. We're waiting here for the silence between the chimes and the bombs. So it's the silence after the chimes and the bombs. Now, that's a very unusual view of the actual bell, Big Ben. The silence is 10 seconds long. Would you believe it? But don't you feel it? Don't you feel every one of those seconds? And it's one of those sort of iconic moments of time, that little piece of time in the middle. And we don't really do anything while we're having that silence, but we're just waiting for the bongs. And it is very iconic, of course it is. It still gives me goosepimples, particularly when I hear it on the radio and perhaps I'm doing a report. That's the worst bit. So we wait for a lot of things to happen. And then they become moments. Moments in time. We all have them. We might have them every day. Well, there will be everyday moments. But we also have specific moments in time when events happen. I call these crossroads moments. They happen in your life. Some of them can be really good. So it could be the birth of a child, it could be a wedding, it could be a graduation, it could be a success. Some of them are not quite so good. It could be a death, you lose your job, you're not happy, whatever. I've had quite a few moments in my life, both personally and professionally. Now I'm going to share a personal one with you first of all. On the 31st of October 2013, I was told I have breast cancer. Now, at that moment, I can remember the moment I was told, and at that moment, I didn't want time to stop. I actually wanted to go backwards, because I wanted those words erased completely. I didn't want to hear it. I wanted it taken away from me. But of course, that didn't happen. But what happened subsequently, in the subsequent months, was my time was taken away from me by the treatment. It invaded every second for months. So my life wasn't my own, my time was used by the treatment. That then ended within its own time span, and life began again. The time came back to me to do with what I will. So that's one of the moments in time. Professionally, I've had quite a few as well, as you can imagine, because I've been around quite a long time. And I've reported from all over the world. So I'll tell you a story about, I'd just come back from the United States, and I was working for BBC World TV. We were broadcasting from central London, and it was 3 months before the BBC started its 24-hour news channel, so there was no news channel. This was in 1997, at the end of August. I was there reading the news to the world, because we were in a different time zone, and I had a couple of producers and a director. That was it, because everyone else had gone home, the big bulletins were over until the next day. This happened.
This is BBC Television from London. Normal programming has been suspended, and we now join Martin Lewis in the news studio.
This is BBC Television from London. Diana, Princess of Wales, has died after a car crash in Paris. The French government announced her death just before 5 o'clock this morning. Buckingham Palace confirmed the news shortly afterwards. Normal programmes have been suspended while we bring you the latest developments throughout the morning.
That was a big moment. What happened, I'll just give you a quick brief overview of how the time went through that night, because there was a timeline of the night leading up to the events. So I went on air at 1 o'clock in the morning. Just as we went on air, we heard the crash had happened and Diana had a cut on her thigh. That's what they said. And then it progressed through the night. Now, there's one thing that everybody needs to remember about this story, is it was before the internet and social media, right? So it took 3 hours to get pictures from Paris. There was very little information. And when we finally did hear that she had died, we heard ahead of that announcement because one of our correspondents was with the Foreign Secretary in the Philippines, and he rang and he said, "We've just been told she's died." But we had to wait for the official announcement. But it gave us time, and me in particular, because I was the one broadcasting, to bring down the tone of our bulletins, bring down the expectation. And at that point, almost every TV station in the world was taking BBC, no matter what time zone they were in. So when that announcement was finally made, I remembered that moment as well, because it's a hard-bitten newsroom. Most newsrooms are, and everyone was affected by it and silent. It's one of those stories that people say, do you remember where you are when such and such happened? So a couple of weeks ago, I had another moment, also royal. But when there's, oh, hang on a second, I think we're hearing some news here. It's a girl.
Oh my
goodness. The Duchess of Cambridge has safely delivered a daughter, we're hearing, at 8:34 a.m. this morning. That's coming from Kensington Palace. This is coming from the PA. Oh, and I just go on and on with one piece of information. It's a girl, because we didn't have anything else. So how did I hear that? No, we were waiting. I mean, people had been waiting outside that hospital for 2 weeks. Some of the American networks were filling airtime with nothing. So we'd been waiting, and we thought, look at the time on that. The announcement was at 11:30. I'd gone on air at 10. So we were waiting, thinking she'd only gone into hospital at 6, might be about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, second baby, da-da-da. So I'm interviewing these guests, and they're getting quite boring, because they're saying the same thing again and again and again. And I'm running out of questions about what can you say about a baby that's about to be born. And the number of times I said, Prince Charles hopes it's a granddaughter, thank goodness it was. But anyway, what happened was, I said to them in the gallery, how are you going to tell me when this happens? Because we usually get a line on the computer or whatever. And they said, oh, we'll just tell you, but it has to be verified and everything. Okay. So in my ear, why am I talking to them? They're going, girl. So then I go, oh, it's a girl. And then the person who's writing the words here you see on the screen, the caption, said to me afterwards, as soon as you said it's a girl, I thought, oh yeah, that'll do, it's a girl. So here I sat. So that was the sequence of events, and there was a few rather funny tweets after this saying I'm obviously the go-to person for royal events, births, deaths, and marriages. So there we go. So that was obviously a much nicer story to do, and the audience really liked this story because of the timing of it as well. It was just before the election, and I think people were getting tired at constant hours filled with politics. So I'm going to show you another couple of stories that I covered when I was in America. I went to America in 1992 as a Washington correspondent, spent 4 years there. 1992 was also the year Bill Clinton went to America. We didn't go together, okay? He was in a big house that was white. I wasn't. But I covered loads of stories when I was there, but there were two in particular. You might remember the Waco siege at the Branch Davidian Ranch. Some of you might be too young for this. It was a siege that went on from the end of February, when the ranch was stormed by the authorities, until it ended on the 19th of April, 1993. And 76 people died when the ranch went on fire. So I covered that story, but in fact, the story went on for so long, we covered the first part of it, and then we went to LA and did a trial, covered a trial, and then came back and finished this story. So this one was rumbling on for a while. 2 years later, exactly, I covered this one, the Oklahoma bomb. So I'm at both of these stories. We're thinking, what a coincidence, same date, 2 years later. But actually it wasn't, because when Timothy McVeigh, one of the bombers, was giving his testimony, he said he timed it so that it would be 2 years for the anniversary of the Waco bomb. So you can see this thread of time going through everything. It affects everything. It influences people's thoughts as well. Which brings me to citizen journalism. Let me go back to the night Diana died. If Diana had died last night in a car crash in a tunnel in Paris, it wouldn't have taken 3 hours to get the information. It would have been seconds. Excuse me. People now have smartphones, there's access to the internet, everything is instant, and it's when ordinary people, not journalists, send material to a news organization, it's known as citizen journalism, or user-generated content. So you are the user, you generate the content. It comes in all shapes and forms these days. Think about Twitter, think about Facebook, think about YouTube, Periscope now, of course, as well. People can be on the scene, taking pictures, taking video, and sending them in. There's a danger to it, because that material comes in, we don't know if it's real, if it's been photoshopped, if it's been edited. So it goes through very, very strict vetting at the BBC. The BBC would rather not be first with the news, wait that little bit more time, and get it right, which is why it's got the reputation. Citizen journalism also has its other side. Think about the Nepal earthquake a couple of weeks ago. People were trying to contact their loved ones who were on Everest via social media. People who were trapped higher up than where the rescue teams were saying on social media, I'm here, come and get me. So the whole world has changed. Broadcasting and media has changed. The way people get their news has changed. And also, the impatience has changed, because everybody wants it right now. You don't want it tomorrow. You don't even want it in 5 minutes. You want it right now. And what has happened with the digital era is that it's made everything instant. And it has made the inaccessible accessible. So think about Everest. We could actually interview people who were trapped on Everest on their mobile phones, and they were telling us where they are. You couldn't get a camera crew there. We interview a lot of people these days by webcam, so it means you can get the voices heard of people who normally wouldn't get heard, which is a really good thing as well. And this is only going to get more and more and more. Well, you saw a bit of it, didn't you? The breaking news. Breaking news is a really interesting concept in terms of time. We break news a lot. We're a rolling news channel. People say, oh, you're breaking everything, and you just go on and repeat and repeat. Now, let me tell you the theory behind this. You break the news, but you can't just say, hey, I've got this great story, this is what I know, we'll come back to it, because you will all be gone. You're clicking, won't let me find some more about this story. That's the impatience factor. Now, nobody wants to wait for anything. So breaking news is actually breaking and sustaining news. I've got to keep you, the audience, until I get some more information, either on my computer or somebody's telling me the latest in my ear. How do you do that? Well, it's experience for a start, but also you've got to have a lot of context. So you have to know what's going on in the world. I usually know what stories are coming up, and I know where they sit in the news agenda. We repeat because you might start at the beginning of my bulletin, but you might have heard there's breaking news and suddenly switch on. And somebody down here might think, oh, what was that? So we repeat it so that everyone coming into the party gets to know what's going on. There's an interesting fact about how long people watch or listen to 24-hour news for. It's 12 minutes, if you're lucky. If you're lucky. They come in usually at the top of the hour, so just before, say at about 55 on the clock, because everything's done by a clock. 55 on the clock is weather. Weather's also at 25 past. They'll watch the weather, watch the headlines, and then decide whether they're going to continue to watch or not. And what keeps them are those hooks coming up in a moment, also later in the program. So it's all about time. The news is on a wheel, which is like the face of a clock. Starts at the top with headlines, headlines at 15 past, headlines at the bottom, headlines at 1:45, and then we start all over again. Never stops, never sleeps. Which brings me again to the impatience factor. How do you keep people patient? Well, you can't. And I think also with younger generations now, they're getting their news in a different way. Everything is instant. Everything's on their phone. I do it myself now. It's just easier. In the old days, when I was out on the road as a correspondent, we would go and get our material at the same speed. So we were bringing it at the same speed. But what we weren't doing is getting it on air fast enough. Because the bulletins were at fixed times. So I might send my material in the morning, but the bulletin wasn't until 6 o'clock, so it would sit. Now it comes in and it goes straight out again, and it goes everywhere. So it's instant. So you've got to feed that impatience. Waiting. A couple of weeks ago, I was sitting with a little 2.5-year-old. He's sitting beside me. He's got his parents' iPad, and he's showing me his little children's videos. And we're watching, you know, all the usual ones. And then he says, oh, I've got this other one. Well, he didn't quite say it. He said other one, because obviously his vocabulary is quite limited. So he's pushing this, and it happens to be a link to a YouTube children's video. So he pushes it, and what happens on YouTube? The ad comes up, right? So he looks up at me and goes, wait. So I'm looking at him and thinking, where did that one come from? And as soon as skip ad came, he pushed it. And then he's singing along with the wheels on the bus or whatever. So I'm looking at him thinking, first of all, I laughed. And then I thought, what does this tell us about the future? If a 2.5-year-old doesn't have the patience to sit through an ad and realizes that he can get rid of it, what's he going to be like when he's 5, 10, 15? So patience, I think, has gone. And I think also it's patience for ourselves. We need to give ourselves a little bit more time. We need to be better to ourselves about giving us that time. Live in the moment. Try and grab those moments in the day, like that 10 seconds in the bell, just before the bong started. Like that 10 seconds. Got to leave you with some bad news? Time flies. But breaking good news, you are the pilot. Thank you for your time. Thank you.